Hey guys, it's Stuart once again, and I just thought I'd like to share with you the 15 life lessons I wish everyone knew. And unfortunately, over the course of the years, I've realized that I've been repeating myself over and over and over again in programs that cost as low as $97 all the way up to $2,997, and people still don't quite get it, and I thought I might as well just put it up here on this video. So here are the 15 in no particular order of merit, but I want you to really understand that if you deep dive into every single one of them, you will be highly successful wherever it is that you go. So, you ready? Let's go. Number 1, your perspective keeps you stuck or keeps you free. Now, I know a lot of people who want to retire early, and whenever I ask them what they want to do when they are retired, they'll say that I'm sitting down by the beach, sipping tequilas, and I'm wondering, it's going to be really bad for your liver. You know what I'm saying? So you're not going to want to end up in society's idea of what freedom is. You got to find the freedom within your own perspective. Now, I've talked a lot about how you ought to strive under pressure, and that's the key thing. So I still remember when I was in officer cadet school, I would be forced to have to run distances, to do push-ups and so on, under the guise of punishment. And while that was terrifying and sometimes really downright ridiculous, it was one of the things that got me to think more about the mindset of doing things rather than the thing that's being done to me instead. You can go into a special place in your mind where all of this doesn't really matter. I think David Goggins mentioned it best, you gotta shift yourself in such a way where whatever is painful on the outside doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is how you want to experience whatever's going on out there. So your perspective keeps you stuck or free. In a recession, for example, there are some people who feel that that's the best time in the world. Whereas there's some people who feel that it's the worst time in the world. How can these two perspectives actually coexist when the world is seemingly objective? Well, it really is the way by which you adopt your perspective and mindset. I still remember moments when there were recessionary periods. It wasn't that there weren't any opportunities, it's just that almost everybody else stopped, right? And because of that, I could get the opportunities. So do remember that it is your perspective that keeps you stuck or free. Lesson number 2, maximize your platform. Maximizing your platform is all about looking at the opportunity that's already presented to you and knowing that if you took this, you will level up along the way. What do I mean? So if supposing somebody gave you an opportunity to speak on stage, would you take it or not? Well, what I found, which was very interesting, is in one of my seminars, there was this girl who actually stood up and started to speak. And she spoke from a very heartfelt, authentic, participative manner that was very value-giving and life-giving to this community of people. She wasn't really the most powerful speaker of all, but she had some power. And the only thing that she did was to stand up on stage and maximize whatever she had and continue to improve herself along the way. Now, this is fantastic because eventually this person became a business partner of mine, and I truly admire the fact that somebody like that is willing to put herself out there. Now, if you have any kind of platform, you are in a job right now, are you maximizing the platform, or are you finding opportunities to escape from whatever it is that you need to do? Now, I know it doesn't sound quite good, especially when you feel maybe ill-treated or anything like that in the workplace. Now remember, it's just a platform. How you do what you do matters the most. If you're practicing running away from responsibilities, your brain will wire itself that way. On the other hand, if you are training yourself to deal with resilience, you're going to train your brain in that way as well. So remember, when you maximize your platform, ask yourself this question: what are you practicing? Number 3, discipline is required to start, but habit is what keeps you going. Why do I say that? For discipline to actually matter, you know that a lot of willpower needs to come into it, right? So I remember when I first started working out, it was terrible. Couldn't even do 3 sit-ups, and that was my max, and I found that, wow, that's a really weak spot for me. So I knew that on the agenda I had to do 30 sit-ups, and that was terrifying, so I just did 10 sets of 3. I had to do whatever it took in order to get to that end. Right now I'm doing something like 4 sets of 30, 4 sets of 40, and it no longer phases me. Now, why this is the case is because every single morning, whenever I finish doing my videos, I'll end up heading off to the gym, doing my workouts and making sure that I hit my abs almost 4 or 5 times a week. Now, this is important because when you think about the kind of willpower that we have, it's going to be limited. But once you convert all of that into your habit, your unconscious mind is going to take over and you don't have to think that much anymore. So now you got to ask yourself, what is it that you have yet to convert into a habit that you really need to build the discipline for today? Could it be your nutrition? Could it be your physical health? Could it be your mental well-being? And have practices that will turn that into a superpower within the next 1 to 2 years. Go ahead, do the math, make sure you prioritize, and then you'll find that you're no longer going to need discipline and your habit will win you over. Number 4, your mindset controls everything. Now, I know somebody who used to think that he was the bomb in his business. He was generating 10 million, 20 million, and at that age, he could claim that he was one of the most amazing people in the world. However, just recently I met a guy who was making $6 million in his business, and he was barely 19 years old. Now, when I thought about that disparity in terms of mindset, the question is, what is the next level? The next level is whatever you think about. You know, if you are thinking that, oh, my limit is $120,000 a year, then it will be that way. If you think that your limit is 10 million a year, then that will be a limit. If your limit is $1 billion, then of course, your mind has to be shaped in a way that allows you to get to that 1 billion. So if you're constantly thinking, oh, I'm old, I'm getting sick, I'll never be as vibrant as I was when I was younger, guess what? It's probably going to happen to you because the brain controls whatever it is that you're looking out for. The more you picture it, the more likely it will manifest itself in a manner that befits that objective. So always remember that mindset matters and mindset is everything. Every single thing that you've got inside of your head is based off a certain set of mindsets. And I have a video somewhere around here where you can look at that has got to do with your ability to measure your mindset so that you'll be able to take yourself to that next level. Number 5, negative emotions are not to be discarded. Now, we live in an aspirin culture, a Panadol culture, where whenever you get a headache, you need to take some medication in order to deal with it. But I want you to really consider the systemic effects whenever something like that, a chemical, is ingested in your system. Yes, it might actually have some neurological effects, some positive, some negative, but more importantly, do you know what exactly it does to your body? If you don't, then I'd recommend that you go the way of the caveman, which is go natural, right? However, do understand that emotions are natural. If let's say you felt negative and in one particular place in your body you felt pain, you wouldn't just remove that part of your body because it still serves a function. Most people don't get this. The negativity that's in their mind is always there because of the perspective that they take. And of course, the negative emotion will continue to be there. If you were to shift your perspective and to reframe the way you see things from different perspectives, I mean, if your mom has always been angry at you and now you're angry at your mom and you're constantly going back and forth like that, then of course you will have a negative mindset whenever you see a bad relationship. Now, at the end of the day, there are patterns that happen across generations, and there are patterns that you can choose to let go if you don't want to have it anymore. The only way for you to do it is to acknowledge that some of these emotions are giving you a message. Aside from going for therapy and some kind of consulting or coaching, I'd suggest that you go deep inside of yourself to find yourself. The deeper you go, the more you realize certain patterns of behavior based on reflecting on the past that has transpired. What were you satisfied with? What were you not satisfied with? What did you do that got some kind of a negative result? And if you take full personal responsibility for it, it's very likely that you will be able to move the needle in terms of shifting from believing that a negative emotion or a negative situation in your life is bad and therefore has to be completely discarded. There's got to be some good in it, and you'll have to hunt for the highest positive intent behind that negative emotion. Once you're able to do that, that will be freedom for you. I still remember having a conversation with this gentleman in a retreat, and he was really having a lot of pent-up emotional blockage. And this emotional blockage is not uncommon. I've seen it in many, many men, and this emotional blockage ends up becoming one of the things that causes people to just shut out things and just aim for the things that they think is best, only that when they reach there, they feel completely empty. Now, when I sat down and talked to him, I realized that he was very focused on one kind of perspective about a relationship. And because of this focus, I had to shift him from one mindset of that relationship to another mindset about that relationship. Eventually, he came to realize that the negative emotion that he was experiencing in context actually did help him to get to where he was today. And in reality, the way by which he was lacking his own emotional state was related to the fact that he lacked a lot of self-compassion. It looked like he would need some time to actually work through his baggage, but eventually he did have a positive outcome of thinking that, there are certain things that will help me to move the needle in my life by first discarding the mindset about what I used to think, that, negative emotions are bad and therefore I have to get rid of them, instead of being in a loop to start taking a look at how negative emotion actually operates as a fundamental stepping stone to the next level. Whenever I have negative emotions, I start thinking about what they are trying to communicate with me. Just like a cut happens on your finger and it starts bleeding, you wouldn't just remove or anesthetize your hand because you are still bleeding. You got to stop the bleeding first. So when you're attending to negative emotions, you have to understand what that negative emotion is really saying to you. So sit down, meditate, be still with that emotion and listen to its highest intent so that you'll be able to process that and uncover a new, more savory goal rather than just getting rid of this emotion. Number 6, learn fast or not learn at all. What I've come to realize about learning is that people procrastinate learning in the first place. So you're putting a video on and then suddenly you get distracted, you don't do anything. Instead, if you just sat through that 15-minute lecture and you played it at 1.5 times the speed for YouTube, you might be able to find nuggets that you can take away almost immediately. And then if you do this on a cumulative basis, you'll be able to acquire a huge amount. Likewise, whenever you buy a book, don't just sit there and read a page at a time. Read through the whole book within an hour. Set yourself a time limit. Go through that book multiple times. That's the basis of what I call accelerated expertise. If you're interested to find out more about accelerated expertise, just let me know down in comments below, and maybe I'll build out a video suitable for the audience here. So go ahead and learn as fast as you can. Pick up stuff. Don't pick things from nuggets. Pick things from global perspectives and then attempt to triangulate the different nuggets that make this entire field of knowledge work for you. One of the things that I realized about slow reading is that we tend to end up getting so distracted and so unmotivated, it no longer serves the purpose. Instead, what I prefer to do is to think about timing. So for example, if I take a metronome and put it at 120 beats per minute, within 1 minute, I follow the beat and flip the pages of my book in accordance to the beat. In other words, within 1 minute, I can flip 120 pages, and if I have a 240-page book, it'll just take me 2 minutes to flip through. The key principle there is no longer just trying to absorb conscious information, but rather knowing where your eyes land and trusting that your eyes will pick up the information that will be useful or valuable. Sure, you might miss 20%, 30% of the information, but if you think about sitting down for 1 hour and doing 2-minute passes of that book, you literally could read that book 30 times within 1 hour. Just a secret there that you can take with you and figure out more things along the way by letting me know if you want to learn more about accelerated expertise. Number 7, prosperity is a mindset, not a talent. I know that a lot of people want to start their side gigs, they want to start a business, and they decide to give it all up. You have to remember that that's a transition phase, and with every transition phase, it requires learnings, it requires mentors, it requires people who can coach you in that skill so that you know exactly what to do at which stage of that business or side hustle. If you don't, then you're going to have to find ways to learn and learn rapidly. And therefore, if you want to make prosperity work for you, you can't just say, oh, if only my salary were to match up with the business. Let's put it this way. The moment you set your mindset there, you're going to get there by struggling in the same way as you did with your job. Instead, if you start thinking about it from a big, hairy, audacious goal, something that Jim Collins talked about in his book, Good to Great, let that vision drive you. Because at the end of the day, if the mind is potentially able to accomplish anything that it imagines, then you're not doing yourself a favor by just imagining an equal paycheck. Number 8, somewhere out there, someone is playing at 10x what you thought you were the bomb at. So if you thought that you're fantastic in doing something, it's probably because in your circle, you are the best of that group. So I remember doing a performance feedback session, and some people were telling me that, they keep receiving feedback that they're doing very well, but it turns out that they don't get as high a bonus as they expected, and another guy from another department whom they've never heard of before seems to get everything. Now you have to remember, if I'm running in high school or in junior college, the moment I take the track and I score, let's say 12.5 seconds, I'm gonna be it, right? Because a lot of people are gonna see that, wow, this guy's got potential. But once I get to, let's say, the collegiate level or, inter-university level, if I'm not somewhere around 11 seconds, I'm nowhere. So depending on where you are, if you're in the SEA Games, for example, and you're number one in the SEA Games, does this mean that you're an Olympic champion? Probably not, right? Unless you go to the Olympics and you qualify and you end up becoming an Olympian. Then you can compete at the level of Olympics, and to be able to check whether or not you're able to make the cut is really just mere milliseconds. If you think about that, people spend years of their life just to shave off milliseconds of whatever it is that they're doing. So remember, somewhere out there, there's somebody much, much greater than you who's performing at such a high level. That's one of the reasons why you need to be in a community. That's why you need to be in some kind of a mastermind, because it just shapes you. If you're only thinking in one way, that is limiting, you can't elevate your thinking to a higher level. Always remember that if you think you're the best at whatever it is that you're doing, take a step back and ask yourself, could there be someone else in the world who's doing far greater than I am with much less effort? And if I were to create that, what can I do? Number 9, your superpower is the space between trigger and response. Now, if you think that sounds familiar, it's because of the quote from Viktor Frankl, who said that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and within that space is your choice. And true enough, choice is a superpower. In order for you to be able to make the right choices, you can't go on autopilot all the time. If you went on autopilot all the time and your default mode was watching Netflix, that's all you're gonna do. If your default mode was shooting targets, highly accurate targets, and you went on default mode all the time, guess what? You'll be shooting anything in sight. So you don't want that part of your brain to just keep active. Instead, what you want to do is to ensure that you maintain a focus on learning how to get out and back into the flow state. Now, I've mentioned this to people a lot of times, but I don't think they quite get it. It's frustrating because this really is a superpower. I remember one time when I was so caught up many years ago in having to complete my work. So I'm here looking at my computer, and every time I'm working on my computer and I have a distraction, I get upset because my workflow has been interrupted. However, I've come to realize that it does make a lot more sense to allow a temporary interruption to my work, because on the one hand, it's better for me because I can create a space. On the other hand, by training myself to keep coming back to it and get into the flow more easily, it actually benefits me, so that nowadays I don't need to get distracted anymore. I don't even classify those as distractions. They're just a temporary break for my brain to get a little bit lighter. And of course, if my loved ones are around me and they interrupt me, do I really want to sacrifice a temporary thing for a permanent relationship? I think we got our priorities wrong somewhere. So within that space is your superpower. To get in and out of that state is going to help you tremendously in maximizing whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Number 10, when you put your best version out there, the universe rewards you. Now, I know a lot of people who are afraid of putting their best out there because they're afraid that when they're constantly doing these kinds of things, they are going to end up feeling like it's nothing. Now, I know a lot of people who try to do this, but they find themselves having imposter syndrome. Here's the thing, imposter syndrome cannot possibly be the best version of you. The best version of you is a choice that you intentionally put forward into the world. If you sat down and you started to think about, when have you been at your best? Whom have you been the best for? You just go at that and you 10x that. Now, what's going to happen is that you're going to sharpen yourself. Yes, you might end up faltering, but that's great because it means that there are certain limits that you're starting to break. Otherwise, you can stay mediocre and feel like you're the bomb, just like in the previous tip that I mentioned to you. Instead, start going out there and doing the things that make you uncomfortable. I know it sounds a little bit cliched by now, but this whole thing about stepping outside of comfort zone, you can't buy it for whatever money that you can get. You need to put yourself out there, and nobody can force you to do anything that you don't want. But at the same time, if you were to do this on a consistent basis, there's something about it where you will reap rewards and it will be a powerful experience. So I definitely would recommend that you go out there, maximize that platform by making sure that you bring your best version to any platform that is present for you. Number 11, arguably one of my favorite, Successful performance equals potential minus interferences. Now, the reason why this is so powerful is simply this. We all know that our brain has immense potential. Some people say even infinite potential. But if you think about it, where's the infinite result? There isn't. And as a result, it must mean that in that equation, that successful performance equation tells us that it is the set of obstacles that is the key. If I can remove my inner interferences, remove that monkey mind, dial down the dialogue, change my emotional states more effectively so that I'm more on par with the potential that I have from birth, then most certainly I will probably get ahead far faster than anyone else. It requires a little bit of intellectual humility because it means that there are certain things that we cannot see that will create a big difference for us. Let me cite you an example from somebody whom I met very recently in a retreat. And this person was a specialist in a certain area of business, while I was a specialist in other areas. Now, when we got to sharing information, not only was he fascinated by what he was missing, he also started to want to share with me whatever it is that he knew. And I was blown away, and I was, to be honest, really upset with myself that I hadn't seen it earlier. But the world is filled with blind spots. If you don't come to terms with your blind spots, you're likely to end up feeling like you've got it all, but actually you're making the mistake of bias. Biased judgments means that you're going to get the same results no matter how hard you try, based on the assumptions that you've previously made. So you always have to challenge and clarify your assumptions in order to get to that next level successfully. So guess what? When you are able to provide perspective and you're able to help people to remove their obstacles, not only are you contributing to their cause, you're letting them realize that they're far more infinite than possible. That's another reason why you want to manage your emotional states. That's another reason why you want to consider coaches so that they can remove the blind spots and the mental blocks that you might carry simply by helping you to shift a perspective much faster because of their skill sets. Number 12, in order to build a solid, scalable business, you need to build a solid, scalable team. Now, I know a lot of people have tried to build teams, but I think they're doing it in the wrong way. I have a video that's talking a little bit more about how to build a solid world-class team somewhere around. And if you'd like to find out more about this and guide your own business, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be very happy to share more with you. Now, the key thing is this. If you want to build a scalable team, you need to be able to have everything else that is revolving around that as the center. You couldn't possibly put yourself as the bottleneck, because if you have to control 20 people, you are going to feel a lot of fatigue. Instead, you'll need to find things like middle management layers. You'll need to hire the right people, the right attitude. You need to get rid of them as soon as you possibly can if they show up some red flags. On top of that, you need to onboard and develop them effectively so that they can be part of a succession plan where people in your team who are more senior and capable go up to the next level, and these people actually fill in that gap. So think about how that works so that you'll be able to be more robust in your development of your team. Because other than that, take a look at a billion-dollar business. In order to achieve $1 billion, typically there's a leverage, and that leverage usually is people. I've never seen a 5-man team build a $100 million business unless they were highly leveraged, like finance, for example, Bitcoin, crypto, for example. Those could be highly leveraged. In most other cases, in order for you to build an architectural firm, are you sure you can build a $100 million business with just 5 people? Probably not. So if you think about being able to do this process known as atomizing, a unicorn, someone who can do 20 tasks and is a superstar in your business, also presents the biggest risk. Why? Because if they leave a huge crater in your business. Instead, you want to break these people down into multiple roles where they don't necessarily have to think, and then you help them to work together, and that's likely to make a much better team rather than just an individual doing things on their own. And oh, by the way, if you have the tendency to try to correct them, don't. Because mistakes are part of that overall flow and process. If you take mistakes away from them, it's like trying to have a baby who's never ever been exposed to a virus, and therefore their immunity will collapse the moment they encounter one at the age of 15 or 16 years old. So don't take away mistakes from your team. Instead, debrief them, learn from them, and then encourage them to move on so that they will learn from those mistakes. After all, what is experience and wisdom? Wisdom, I like to argue, is being wise because you were dumb. And as a result of that, you became more knowledgeable, more experienced, and you can spread this love to other people as well. Number 13, constantly expand your consciousness. Now, it doesn't mean you stay awake all the time. What it does mean is for you to ensure that you lean into some form of spirituality and study spirituality. There is a great awakening that's happening right now, and short of me trying to sound like a spiritual guru, which I'm not, by the way, I just want you to understand that there is a purpose to your life, and that purpose is encapsulated within a broader field within the universe. That's why some people say, oh, the universe has shown me a pathway, that kind of thing. And that kind of consciousness can only happen when you understand a few concepts. For example, resonance is a very powerful concept because if I resonate with you, we seem to have some kind of chemistry. But don't you think that's the same case between yourself and a client? Isn't that the same thing when you are attempting to resonate with, let's say, an idea, to put it out into a book or a video? These kinds of things require a certain flow. In reality, you're not creating content, you're actually downloading content from the universe, which is out there in the so-called matrix. And if you wanted to know a little bit more, I've got so many amazing stories about how I've encountered this. I'll be sharing this in subsequent videos. If you're interested in spirituality, type in spirituality down in the comments below. Spirituality is not religion. It's about finding a place in this world. What is your biggest reason for existence in this world? And if you are unable to find it, keep looking for it. In fact, go out to friends. Ask them, why are we friends? Why do we connect so well? And through that process, you're likely to uncover something special about you as you go through the journey in making friends. Talk to your customers, get feedback from them. Why did you choose me as a customer? And once you're able to find these answers, you'll discover a special thing about you that places you on this map, in this world, in this universe, that is highly, highly structured, valuable, desired, and more importantly, worthy. So always seek out to expand your consciousness. To get you started, you can go down the rabbit hole of these three key people that I truly admire and truly respect: Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, and Bruce Lipton. The moment you start on that journey, I'm pretty sure you'll never be able to turn back. Number 14, learn about the 4 spaces in relation to your relationships. What are the 4 spaces? Number 1, your public self, the one that everybody seems to know, thing that you portray most in public. Number 2, the personal self. Now this goes beyond the veneer. It goes a little bit deeper into certain things that most people will not know but find intriguing. And some of these personal things could be like the things that you like, the relationship that you have with your parents, something a little bit more vulnerable, but it doesn't get very intimate. And that's the 3rd space, which is the intimate space, where you share certain vulnerabilities in a certain way because you have psychological safety, and the people that you're sharing with actually have a great level of admiration and learning from your past experiences and your wisdom in order to grow themselves. It's likely that in the intimate space, you're only going to be able to share this with a very, very small group of people. And then finally is the private space. The private space is a space where you may not even know, but you kind of get glimpses of it from time to time, and you're uncomfortable sharing it with anyone else. So in that light, there might be weird experiences that you've had or very dramatic experiences that you've had, and because of this experience, you want to be able to take that and only share it with very select people, and possibly use that as a means to uncover more about yourself in your own intrapersonal relationship, so that you can grow and multiply your network. And the ability for you to do that is to sift them from the public space down to the personal space, down to the intimate space, down to the private space. Never stop looking. If you find that there are people missing in those 4 areas, don't stop looking. In fact, you'll find that your network equals your net worth is actually not quite it. I think your network funnel is your net worth. And if you don't have a proper funneling process to filter through people who are worthy of being within your inner circle of life, then you probably wouldn't be able to find the right kinds of confidants, the right kinds of coaches, the right kinds of colleagues, as well as the right kinds of go-to mentors and collaborators in the world. So always keep people in mind. Never start looking for them because you're desperate. Which brings us to point number 15. If you need something and you go get it, it's likely that you'll be desperate because of the need. So you'll need to expand your pool first and contribute to that pool before you get some insight as to what you can go for. Now, what do I mean? There are so many different kinds of pools. It could be a talent pool, it could be a customer pool. If you're desperate for customers and you start going after them when you need the money, then of course you'll be seen as just a desperate fool. If you are desperate in hiring people because your A-star player has left, then of course every time you're hiring a new person, you're also going to look like a desperate fool. If you want a network and you start to expand your network because of an ulterior motive, anybody can see through that motive. So instead of doing that, don't have any thoughts about whether it's going to work or not going to work. Just go out there and connect. The more you connect, the more you're able to establish that pool. And the more you establish that pool, somewhere along the line, you will rationalize how this pool of people are going to be able to function well, either across different groups of networks, or with yourself, or with someone else whom they know that could contribute to you, and so on. That's the power of the network. So if you find that you're only doing things for an ulterior motive, that is a hidden agenda, then reconsider, because it's unlikely to be valuable for you. So there we have it. We've got 15 amazing life lessons that I wish that everyone knew. And if this resonates with you, type in comments below and let me know what was your biggest takeaway so that I'll know what to focus on in my subsequent content. In the meanwhile, if you haven't done so, click the subscribe button and share this video with all of your friends. Until the next video, take care and go out there and crush your goals.